Today we're going to talk about the double slit experiment, then a dark slit, and we're going to explore classical interference versus quantum behavior. Now, the equations for double slit experiment are that the bandwidth, the width of those bands on the second item at the right, depends upon the wavelength of the light and the distance big D to the screen, and little d, the distance between the slits. Now, if you just get a regular slit, just a single slit, basically what happens is light gets spread. Now, this happens for a slit. If you do a circle, it's spread in both directions, and you'll be more difficult to get this the Young Double Slit experience. So a regular slit basically spreads the light. Now, if you do a double slit pattern, what happens is at the second barrier, you get this strong light. Now, these experiments are obviously not easy to do, especially in regular high school classrooms and things like that. And so it's not quite so easy. As you can see, if the slits aren't perfectly parallel, if they're not quite the same, you get some little distortions here. But in general, you can see a light-dark band. Now, what basically is happening is in the dark band, if you had, it is a reduction. And calculated, to me, is an interference pattern. If you have the regular single slit, and then you put a second single slit, the red line here would be just the sum of those two slits. Obviously, they're offset a little bit for the size of that little d, the distance between the slits. Okay? So, but at certain locations, the report is exactly the same. That's shown in green. But at other positions, based upon the formula, you get basically a dark band. It has reduced light. So the question really is, what is missing? Where did that energy go? If you did the two lights at different times, it would be the red. But somehow, all the energy in those intermediate bands disappears. So what happens in the dark marker? Can we discover other properties from that? What are we doing, and what is the difference in that? What is expected from wave physics? Are they quantum, or are they classical interference? And what would be the proof of either? Also, what are the other variables? Because we're actually trying to teach students both standard physics, quantum physics, and experiment to validate these theories. So there are other things you can ask. Is it a vacuum versus air? What's the wavelength? What's the receiver? Does it have a certain characteristics that makes it do that? Is there anything that would make that behave differently? So I designed the following things. What happens is that instead of just the initial test, we actually put a slit at the back end, and we orient it in that dark slit. So what will happen? Obviously, if you're going at the regular center of this, you basically have the aggregation point, and you're going to have that two bright things aggregating, and it's really past this dark slit just going to be like the red line in the last item. However, when you put it in a dark slit, what happens? Beyond that, is there still zero intensity? So if you have physics spin, and you think of spin really as some sort of interference pattern between the two things, when they start up, these two are the same, and this becomes that red line, okay? But in the dark slit, it becomes, well, the red line here, which is the sum of those two. As one goes up, the other one goes down. And so the sum of those two is 0. So in that dark space, and two photons that arrive in basically a 50-50% ratio will interfere and cause no activation, even though there are two photons. There is energy, but it doesn't display because at that position, they interfere with each other. Now, in the aggregation point, all that happens is you get twice the energy. It goes up by 2. And in between, you basically get these patterns where they're offset. Now, I'm not going to tell you the results of this because I want you to try this with your students, because you'll find the amazing thing. At those distances further out, something happens that tells you whether the Young double slit experiment is interference or proof of quantum theory. Thanks.